Tired of unreliable experience with operating systems? Well, here's the solution for you. So what we have here, actually, if we just boil it down to its bare essentials, is a setup where we have two virtual machines, one for Mac and one for Windows, and Linux, Arch Linux, I use Arch by the way, running at the core of it. So that's the whole crux of this setup. And this is such an amazing setup because you get bare metal performance without having these proprietary operating systems running at bare metal. So let's get right into the tutorial. So the first step is to go to the Rising Prism guide. I would have that actually Rising Prism GitLab. I'll have this linked in the comments down below, and we want to go to the wiki. Right. So the first step is editing grub, and actually the first step, sorry, is making sure that all of these options are enabled in your BIOS. And let me make this a little bigger. IOMMU enabled, NX mode enabled, and SVM enabled. I'm just going to assume that you've already done that, and let's proceed further. So the next step is to set our boot parameters in our grub. So I do not actually use grub. So what I would do is I would set them in my bootloader, which happens to be systemd boot. So I'll have to cd into boot and cd into loader, entries, and I have rolling release and stable. I'll be editing the rolling release one. Sudo vim rolling.conf. So I'll go here and I'll have to specify the options right here. So I'd set AMD IOMMU equals to on and IOMMU equals to PT. Now IOMMU equals to PT is not required, and I have experimented and it works without this option set also, but still we'll set that just in case, and I would write in quit vim. Now for grub, you do need to regenerate your config, and it is specified what you want to how you want to regenerate. And now what we'll have to do is we would have to reboot our PC and then come back to it. So I would also be back after a reboot now. Alright, so we're back, and this step of editing the bootloader has been done. So let's check if our IOMMU groups are valid. So I'll open my terminal here. Switch to bash, and here we go. Our groups look sane enough to me. Let's find our graphics card. There it is. So this is done. Now we need to configure libvirt. So I'll be using Arch Linux, so I'll just copy this command right here. And let's have this done. IP tables, NFT and IP tables are in config. Remove IP tables. Yes. And there we go. Alright, so we have our dependencies installed. And let's start editing our config. So, sudo vim etc libvirt / libvirtd.conf. Let's go here, and we're looking for Unix stock group. We'll uncomment this, and we want RW permissions to be 0070. Yep, this one. We'll uncomment this, and we'll paste these two lines. Oops. We'll paste these two lines at the very end. So let me go to the very end and paste these in. I'll get rid of these useless lines here and save. Let's run this command. Of course, I would have to do this. And let's start the libvirt daemon. Oops, I think I did not copy that correctly. So sudo systemctl start libvirt, and I would also enable libvirt. Perfect. And then we need to go to this file. I'll just copy its location from here. Sudo vim. And now here we need to change user to our username and group to our group. So let me search for user equals. There it is. So I'll uncomment this and change user to my username. And let's uncomment this and change it to my group. So I have done this now. And let's see, what do we need to do after this? Right, now we'll need to restart the libvirt service. I can copy this real quick, paste it in here. Restart libvirt service. Perfect. And now let's start with the actual configuration of the virtual machine. So first, we'll be setting up our Windows virtual machine, since it just almost always happens to be easier to set up. So let's get a Windows 10 ISO. I'll go here, download. Edition, I'll choose the latest one, confirm. Validating my request, English, confirm. 64-bit, and save file, okay. Now my internet's pretty fast, so it would be done really quickly. I'll get back to you once this has been downloaded. Alright, so I have downloaded it, and let's get started with creating our virtual machine. So from this point, I pretty much know what to do, so I'll just ignore these steps for now, and you can follow along my tutorial. And I'll jump straight to this one. So we need to go to this link to get our vBIOS. I'll leave this one in the description as well. And now we'll need to filter. So GPU brand AMD, card vendor mine is Gigabyte. So G here. Card model, mine would be an RX 570. RX 570. There we go. And now what we want is to get the latest vBIOS and not anything else. This is super important, and I cannot stress this enough. So the 2019 one looks the most recent to me, and I would download this vBIOS. I'll save this file, and let's go to this file. So I'll rename this file to GPU.ROM. And the next thing actually which I would do is to place it. So let's see where we want to place it. So for something like Arch Linux, we would want to place it here in /var/lib/libvirt/vbios. Oops, I opened inspect element again. So mvgpu.rom, and we want to move it there. Seems like it's not a directory, so I'll do sudo mkdir-p, and then I'll make var libvirt vbios. Enter my password. Of course, I'll get permission denied, because why not? There we go. Now we have placed our file correctly. Now the next thing that we need to do is actually change the permission. So 660 is it, the permission? So let's go cd/var/lib/libvirt/vbios sudo chmod -r 660 and gpu.rom. There we go. And let's check the permissions. They look about right. And yeah, that's about it. Now we won't be touching the scripts as of now, since we do need to prepare our virtual machine. So I'll switch over to a new workspace, and let's open virt manager, and I'll actually have to do something. So that's sudo net auto start default. Oops. Vershnet, and I think it's this way. No, it's sudo versh net auto start default. There we go. And now I'll open virt manager, and it would not give me any trouble. So alright, so let's start with the installation for this virtual machine. So what I would do is I would first browse local, go here, go to my downloads, and I'll choose Windows 10 ISO. Proceed further. I want to allocate it 8192 MBs of RAM, and I'll give this 4 cores. It's good. Go forward and create a new disk. I'll give this 160 should be fine. Let's go forward, name it Win10. Yeah, make sure to check customize configuration before install, and we'll click finish. Virtual network is not active. Yes, and we'll go here, overview, and set the firmware to be OVMF code. We'll go ahead, click apply, and begin installation. And now it would start with the installation. So I'll press escape, press X, type exit, go to the boot manager, and go through the DVD ROM, and now we should start to see the dreaded Windows loading thingy pretty soon. Make it a little smaller for now. Click next, install now, and the setup is starting. I see my memory spike up. I don't have a product key, of course. I don't. Collecting information. Aren't you always Windows? Windows 10 Pro. Next. And now, yeah, I accept to my soul being sold to Windows. Next. And now it would start the actual bloatwaring process, or as some people call it, Windows installation. So while the bloatwaring process is going on, let's see what we can do. We'll go back to the guide. Oops. Go back to the guide, not this guide. Yeah. And we'll actually git clone this URL pretty quick. So, oops, what workspace was I on? Yeah, here. And I'll actually go to another workspace. CD into my packages. Oops, CD into my packages folder. And git clone into single GPU pass-through. Let's CD into single GPU pass-through. And we need to install it. So chmod plus x install hooks.sh, and then we can just run this script with sudo, that is, of course. There we go. And now let's get back to our bloatwaring process. Alright, it seems our bloatwaring process is almost finished, and soon it would be the reboot time. There we go. Let's reboot now. And I'm just hoping that it does not do the pass-through attempt. Sure enough, it did not. Alright, so now it's getting spyware ready and the bloatware ready. We need to wait for the bloatware to kick in. It takes some time. It's quite a corporate level bloatware. It's not some weak sauce bloatware that would not take that long. So yeah, let's wait for it and I'll be back soon. Alright, now here comes the proper spyware installation phase. So another reboot, and now this time I guess we'll be greeted by the bloatware called Cortana. Spyware, bloatware, malware, whatever. Yep, of course, we're greeted with Cortana, the legendary bloat. So let's get started. Of course, I'm in the United States. I'm actually not. But I don't want them to know, but they probably know because, well, I'm using the internet without VPN right now. Sure enough, they have some important malware to set up. Alright, so set up for personal spying. Next. Go with offline account. Limited experience, of course. Billy G, that's my name. Next. Password. Yeah, secure. Security question. What was their first pet's name? Oh, let's just raffle between them. Next. Let's switch off all the spying they let you see they're doing. Accept. Not now. We're getting everything ready for you. Sure enough, you are. I hear the sound. We all know what that means. There we go. Our local spying center is set up. Oop. Task. No, not taskbar. Task manager. No apps running. CPU. Of course, I have an AMD EPYC ROM. Now let's power this down. Power this down. Oops. Power close. Force shut off. Yes, don't ask me again. And now what we'll do is we'll get rid of all of the display spice stuff. Remove display spice, remove video QXL, remove these serial thingies and the channel spice. And I'll remove this CD-ROM. And now what we'd want to do is add our PCIe devices. So go to PCIe host device. I would add both instances of my my graphics card, which are listed here. Add both of them. Here we go. And then what we would want to do is adding that into our config. So I'll copy this line, go to here, go to our XML, and just below the source I would paste that in. Oh, XML editing is disabled, of course, so I'll need to go to View Manager, Edit, Preferences, Enable XML Editing, close this out, paste it here, and now I would rename this to GPU.ROM because that's what I named mine. Copy this over, apply, go here to the second instance, and paste it there as well, and hit apply. Alright, so before I forget it, there's one last step we need to do before we go ahead and give booting a try, and that is actually editing the CPU config. So we will change that over to host pass-through, apply, and I'll change the vCPU allocation to 16, topology manually set, and it would be 1 socket, 8 cores, and 2 threads. Apply. So let's actually there's one more bit that we need to do, and I'll go back to the Rising Prism wiki to continue it. So let's go to the wiki, editing XML. Let's go here, and that is enabling this .poext feature. And I'll go here, get rid of this, and CPU, enable, apply. There we go. And I'll also, while we're at it, change the memory to be something like 1200, which is about 12 gigs instead of 8. And now let's give it a try. So as you can see here, I'm booting my Windows virtual machine using the terminal. You can for sure use the graphic user interface, but I just prefer using the terminal. Now, one thing that you do need to keep in mind is that we have not passed our USB devices, so our keyboard and mouse would not work. But I actually do it on purpose because sometimes the keyboard and mouse are the problem, and I want to get rid of that from the get-go. Now, your screen would also be in the wrong resolution since your graphics drivers aren't installed. So once those are fixed, your screen would look correct. Alright, so we're pretty much finalized with the Windows virtual machine at this point. So what we would want to do is open Virt Manager, And inside of here, let me open this up. We would want to add another device, and that PCIe device would be our host USB controller. In my case, it is this one. Let's add this, and we're done. And that's our Windows virtual machine. So you'll need to install your graphics drivers, and once those are done, your virtual machine would basically act like a real PC would, and you can totally use it normally. Now, but when you shut down though, here's a twist. You get back to your Linux lock screen instead of your like your PC shutting down. Alright, so that was everything for the bloated Windows setup, and now we'll be doing the bloated Mac setup. So let's open a terminal and a Firefox window. And so the first thing that I would actually do is go into my NVMe, cd into VMs. So, well, I have two NVMe's. One is my boot drive and the other is for VMs and stuff, so I just moved to there. And I'd want to search the web for OSX KVM. Now, OSX KVM works better in comparison to the other Mac Simple KVM in my experience, so I just go with this rather than the other one. I do want you to know that in the end, this is all personal preference. So I'd want to clone it, but I'll make sure to do a shallow clone, which means that we only clone the latest revision. So let's do a shallow clone of this repository, and I'll clone into a folder called Big Doge instead of Big Sur, because why not? There we go. It's cloning. Let's just let this do its thing. Alright, so let's run the fetch script. So Python 3, and now we'll go with Big Sur. That's the latest and the greatest. So choose option 4, go ahead. And now it would start the download. Now this can take quite a long while depending on how fast your internet is. Mine is pretty fast, I'd reckon, so it's not going to take that much. Alright, so it has now been downloaded, and the next step is to convert the DMG to an image file, and we'll do it this way. It should take a little bit, and now we're going to create our Mac disk. I'll give this 256 gigabytes. There we go. We have created it, and now we can finally let this run. It's not executable. Okay, there we go. We had run into a slight hiccup, but now it's fine. Let's choose macOS based system, and it can take a little while. I'll just oops, not full screen, that full screen. This apparently does not want to full screen, so I guess can yeah, there we go, full screen. Alright, there we go. We see the Apple logo, the dreaded Apple overlords spying logo, and we see this. So it can take a little bit to boot, so I'll be back when it has booted finally. Alright, so it has done its thing. So the next thing that we want to do is go to our disk utility, and here our list disks would be listed. So there will be this 200 something gig drive, and what we want to do is we want to say erase. Now erase is quite an idiotic term for what we're about to do, and I'll call this big bug. And we'll obviously format it to APFS and GUID partition map and click on erase. Now Apple has this thing of having its weird terms, obviously, because why not? And now we want to go to reinstall Big Sur. Click on continue, And you're in for quite the ride here, since this would take forever to install. Just so you know, you'll have to wait, so I'd recommend you open up something that you would like to watch on the side or something. Click agree, choose big bug, or whatever the drive is. And now this zoom thing happens, but it would take about 40-ish or 30 minutes. It won't take 2 hours and 20 minutes, that's just a wrong estimate, and it would update itself pretty soon. So, as I said, I would be back after this is done, since it is quite a time-consuming process. Alright, so, well, it rebooted, and it's into... starting to do something, it seems. So as you can see, it has rebooted, and we'll actually boot into the macOS installer instead of the base system. So let's go into that and let it do its thing. So it will take a little bit. This is like the Hackintosh boot hook or something, where it just tries to, well, load some texts and stuff. So let's let it do its thing. There we go. Now we see the Apple logo, and pretty soon it would start showing an estimated time remaining just below, somewhere here. Let's wait for that. And once that is done, we'll be starting with our Mac setup. So as you can see, it says about 29 minutes remaining. I reckon it should actually take about that much. So once we're done, I'll be back. Alright, so it's time for the final boot, and we're booting into our Mac installer again. So once we're finally booted in, it should give us all the fancy options. Wait, I think it's not the final boot. This is the semi-final boot, and then there will be the final boot. But I'll just have to confirm, and I'll know real quick which one it is. Okay, it's not the final one, since as you can see here, if you like in the very endings of some lines, it gives some percentage, and that percentage is how much it's done copying. Yeah. So this is not the final boot that we were looking for, but yeah. It takes some time running a Hackintosh, at least the first boot. Alright, I see the Apple logo, and my cursor should appear hopefully soon. Okay, I guess this would be the final boot. There are quite a bit of boots that take place in Hackintosh Big Sur installation. Here we go. It's doing its thing. Booting. Apple logos here. Cursors here. Cursors. Albeit extremely laggy and jittery, the cursor is here. Alright, here's the Big Sur installation. So we'll choose a country. It's going to be extremely painful to get this to work, I know. So I'm fully aware that it's going to be extremely slow, but it would get better soon. So I'll choose my country, click continue. Now the slowness would fade away the moment we attach our graphics card to it. And well, we can click continue. Just taking my cursor off too. Perfect. Not now. We don't need any accessibility. We'll continue with their data stuff. We do not want to reset. We'll do not now. Apple ID I'll set up later, So setup later. Yes, I want to skip. Terms and conditions, I'll agree to them. Agree to your soul being sold to Apple overlords, yes. Full name. There we go. Continue. Let's go forth with it. And now I reckon it would ask me about, okay, continue, express setup, whatever. Okay. I'll just continue. I do not want this to be shared or whatever. Setup later. No, I do not want to enable Siri. Siri is just annoying. Continue. I'll go with dark. Continue. And I think this is actually the last step, and now we'll be booted into our Mac desktop. There we go. Now I'll just let it boot a bit, and then I would power it down shortly. Alright, so now I would actually, okay, it needs some keyboard thing. I'll do that, done. And I would shut this down, so shut down. Do not reopen Windows and shut down. So now this should close. There we go. And I'll close this as well. So if we go back to the guide, there's actually some information about how we can define using the XML file. So here we go. Let me cd into my NVMe, cd into VMs, cd into Big Doge, and then here there will be the XML. Actually, yeah. And what I would do is I would change all of that. And I would also have to edit the macOS XML a little bit, just because our folders won't really be lining up. Just want to make sure what it is. Okay, I actually need to edit quite a bit here. So I would need to copy this entire bit. Oops. I'll just copy this entire bit. Now you might not need to do that. Actually, I'd say you would not need to do that. And what I would have to do is change all of that from macOS.xml and pass that over to bigsur.xml. XML. And if I go back here, I'll have to change all of this. So I'll escape this, escape it here, escape it here, and I would have to change all of this to change the word here. So I'll have to change this to slash. So I'll have to escape it here again. Disks slash, then escape the slash here again. Disks and NVMe. Escape the slash. VMs. And then escape the slash here again. and it is big Doge, and all right. Can't read big sur.xml, no file or directory. Oops, I need to output it to big sur.xml. And I'll just check big sur.xml to make sure my sed command was right. Since I am a little bit rusty with sed. Disks, NVMe. Seems to be about right. Check here, go down. Just want to make sure everything's done the correct way. Disks, NVMe, VMs, yeah. It actually seems about right as far as I can see, so I would exit out of this and then we can define it. So first we'll do virt xml validate big sur.xml. It validates. So versh define, I reckon, let me check first. Big sur.xml. I don't actually need to do the connect thingy since my verse is actually alias to always be this. So it's not an issue for me, but you would actually need to use that. So I'll open my virt manager and as you can see, I have this macOS VM. Now what I would do here first is change this to 8 cores, and I would actually let it be QEMU64. Apply the config, go to memory, and I'll change that to about 12 gigabytes. Apply here. I would get rid of the display spice, and I would get rid of the video VGA. Also get rid of the channel QEMU GA, and also get rid of the serial port here. I'll let the NIC be whatever it is, and these can stay. Now I would actually rename it to Big Sur. Hit apply, and there we go. So now, just as we did with Windows, we'll pass our graphics card over. So let me make this a little bigger, pass this instance over, and pass this instance over. Now since Mac actually does require my USB to boot, I would pass my USB also over, pass that. Now I have all of these PCIe devices, but what I do not have right now is the ROM config. So I'll just copy it over from my Windows VM, paste it over here, yes, and paste it over here. So if you try booting right now, it would not work since our QEMU file is not configured for the Mac VM. Okay, so what we would need to do is we'd say sudo edit, and it would be /etc/libvirt/hooks/QEMU. It would ask me for my password. I'll give it that real quick. And then here you would see we have this if object is equal to Windows 10. Then here what we would do is we'll add an OR statement, and we'll say if object is equal to Big Sur, oops, not this way, Big Sur, then. So what we are doing here essentially is we're adding an OR case. So if the VM is either Windows or it's Mac, then we want to run these hooks. So we'll save that real quick and close that out. And now we're actually good to try to boot into Mac. Now I'll be switching to my phone again due to obvious reasons, and you'll see it from there. I would like to thank you all for watching this video, and I hope you liked it. And actually, do give KVM a shot. It's really, really good, and I am sure you would not regret it. Goodbye and take care.